This is the field of 68. I'm Vince Wolfram.
I'm JOJO CAVANAGH in Auburn, Alabama. And this
is Straight Out the Jungle.
Welcome back to Straight Out the Jungle. My name is Vince Wolfram.
I'm JOJO CAVANAGH.
No.1 Auburn traveled to Texas A&M last night in College Station to battle a Buzz Williams-led team, and they fell to that A&M team. Auburn did 83-72. Now, this is A&M's first ever win over the team ranked number 1 in the AP poll. It snaps a 6-game losing streak against Auburn, who last weekend clinched the SEC regular season title with a win over Kentucky. This game, totally different than I think any game that we've seen to this point. JoJo, talk to me about what you saw.
Yeah, it just seemed that Texas A&M 100% outworked Auburn. To me, this was the first game watching all season long where Auburn did not look like the hardest working team on the court, which is kind of a shock coming from a Bruce Pearl team. But it definitely stems from winning the SEC regular season title on Saturday. And I hate saying that. Truthfully, I wish I didn't have to say it, but it is true. Texas A&M just outworked them. It was senior night. It was at home. They had lost 4 straight. They were a 2nd seed when they won 5 in a row, lost 4 straight. So now they've bumped down to a 5 or 6 seed. Bruce Pearl talked about the Florida team just wanting it more. Texas A&M just wanted it more, and they outworked Auburn in College Station.
Felt like Auburn drove to the desert and they ran out of gas. And A&M, they looked like the hungry coyote that had stumbled upon the car and smelled blood. That's kind of what this game felt like. It felt like Auburn was visibly gassed. You could tell they didn't have their legs under them really from the tip. Once they got down early, you could tell that. And the Aggies' preparation, scouting, execution, they did everything they needed to do, and they outplayed the number 1 team all night, as frank as I can put that. First 10 minutes of the game, A&M made literally everything they shot, it felt like. Felt like when on 2K when you take the sliders and you increase them all the way so you're on 100%, so you literally can't miss. That's kind of how it felt. They got up big, and Auburn kind of was trying to figure it out. It felt a little rushed. They were a little step slow on defense. So a slow start, I think, kind of pitted them. But there was plenty of other things, too, that led to the not being able to come back, which we've seen from Auburn plenty this year.
Yeah, I think what's different about this Auburn team is usually when Auburn starts bad on defense, they're shooting lights out on offense. And then to the contrary, when they're starting to have a great offensive run, then maybe they're not as great on defense. And that's why they're the number 1 team, because they're able to balance it out. And then sometimes, like Ole Miss at home, they're just on fire on both sides of the court. Last night, there was no resistance on defense, and then they started 1 for 4, and there was just nothing going right for offense. So truthfully, it was just both ends of the court just did not look well. But it was rebounding and just Texas A&M's defense that absolutely killed Auburn. And Texas A&M has the 8th best efficiency in KenPom on defense, so they are a great defensive team. But rebounding, Texas A&M out-rebounded Auburn 41-25. It's the most Auburn has been out-rebounded the entire season. But really, it's not even defensive rebounds. It is offensive rebounds. Auburn had 9. Texas A&M had 24. This led Texas A&M to have 29 second chance points compared to Auburn's 11, and 18 points off turnovers compared to Auburn's 11. It was just Texas A&M on the glass. They got every single offensive rebound. It felt like Auburn couldn't get anything done. Auburn's 24 offensive rebounds allowed and 16 rebounding difference is the season's worst for Auburn. It is a game where Auburn never led the entire game, which we haven't seen. And I can't believe I'm saying that 30 games in. But truthfully, it felt like Auburn got outworked in multiple aspects, especially the rebounding battle and second chance points, which I feel like is the most work of every game. Like usually you're seeing Dylan Cardwell there on the glass. Nothing was going right for Auburn. And Bruce Pearl basically said that. He said, we just got physically punched in the mouth. And I feel like that accurately describes how Auburn fans feel, how Bruce Pearl feels, and how the team feels, because they just got outworked by A&M.
Yeah, Bruce Pearl after the game last night said the best way to beat Auburn is hit him in the mouth, and we're either going to be able to handle the physicality of the play or we're not. The scouting report is out. That's what it is. And to your point about the rebounding and second chance points. That was so obviously, whether you watched the game or you just read the stats, That was the difference. And if you weren't able to watch the game, at points there was times when there were five white jerseys watching the basketball. And there was a point, I know Wade Taylor missed 2 shots in a row, ended up getting his own offensive rebound and finishing the play. I'm sure that is a play that Bruce will rip, shred, and tear in film today, because you just can't do that. You're the #1 team that prides themselves with a coach that coaches toughness, and a team that has brought the energy and outfought every team they've played to this point in majority of their games, minus maybe Florida being the exception. For the #1 team, you can't have that. You can't allow 5 tip-ins on a game like that, where, like you said, 29 second chance points, 5 of those baskets just came at the rim from second chance tip-ins. Like, that's a tough stat to give up, especially when you're big, Dylan Cardwell, who I thought had a pretty solid game overall. And Janai Broome and Chaney Johnson, those guys who have been great protectors of that paint and the rim all season long, give up just a domination from Texas A&M like this. I thought that piece was the most obvious difference. It felt like every time Auburn shot, the ball went the other way, like they missed it and A&M got the rebound, and every time A&M shot, they were going to get another shot. That's kind of how it felt, and the repetition was there. Obviously, offensive rebounds, 24 of them. You give up 24, one, you're not going to win the boards, and 2, you're not going to win the game. So that was just a kind of a recipe for disaster. And I think it kind of goes back to where you make your money, and that's through Janai Broome. And I hate harping on the guy for 2 straight bad games, but it looked like he saw a ghost a little bit last night. And I think he is due for a great game. And I'm not saying he's not the player of the year or anything like that. He's just had 2 bad games. It just came in tough times when last night, I think, was the first time we didn't see everybody else step up like we have, that have helped Auburn, especially like against Kentucky. Janai didn't have his best day. That's okay because you have Miles Kelly. Well, there was no that's okay last night because it didn't seem like anybody really stepped up. There was certainly guys who were trying, Chad Baker-Mazara being one of them. Miles Kelly trying, but those fouls kind of hindered him a little bit. Tahad Pettiford in his first start, certainly trying. But I think you do have to go back to your bread and butter going forward, which is Janai Broome, and you got to get him going.
Yeah, to me, in the first half, I thought Chad Baker-Mazara was Auburn's lifeline. He had 10 points in the first half. He ended with 16 points. And then in the second half, Tahad Pettiford had 15 points in the second half. So to me, those were kind of the 2 guys that were Auburn's lifeline throughout this game. But it still just didn't feel like anyone was stepping up. And for Janai Broome, he had his second bad game in a row. And we've been one of the people that are like, we think Janai Broome deserves player of the year. We're not saying that, but it is true that you said he saw ghosts. There's 2 back-to-back bad games for Janai Broome, and we're not going to shy away from that. And against Kentucky, it was Miles Kelly going off for 30, but tonight it just didn't seem like there was someone else. And against Kentucky, you had Miles Kelly going off for 30, you had Tahad Pettiford and Chad Baker-Mazara. I was like, oh my God, the guards. But then you also need your front court to step up. And tonight, Chaney Johnson had 4 points. Janai Broome didn't play well. Dylan Cardwell had 8. I thought he played a good game, but it just didn't seem like anything was going right for Auburn. And yes, Tahad Pettiford had 19 points in his first career start. He made 6 threes, which was his highest he's made all season. He had back-to-back threes at one point when Auburn was kind of in a tight game. So it felt like Tahad Pettiford in the second half was Auburn's lifeline. And I thought the same for Chad Baker-Mazara in the first half, kind of just ended up making individual plays, having double digits in the first half, knocking down that 3 before halftime. But truthfully, it just didn't seem like a usual Auburn game where if Janai Broome's playing bad, you have multiple guys kind of stepping up. Because to me, first half, Chad Baker-Mazara stepped up. Second half, Tahad Pettiford stepped up, and I didn't really see anyone else. Whereas there's usually 2 to 3 guys in Janai Broome's absence, which is why I think Auburn lost this game.
And I think moving forward, the emphasis has to be getting Janai Broome going early, even in the second half. Like, he didn't have a great first half, and I think that's kind of where Auburn dug their hole, and they couldn't really get out of it. Second half, Janai was 3 for 5 from the field. Was kind of like in the times where he did get to his spots, he was scoring the basketball like we had seen. And I think you just need to do that a little earlier, because when Janai gets going and he sees the ball going through the basket, it's like you gave food to a beast, because that's what he does. He gets to his spots, and once he gets comfortable, the game is his to take over. Last night, I just don't know that he really got the chance to be comfortable. I don't know where that stems from. And I think that he will figure it out naturally with the flow of the game and who he's playing, knowing that everybody's going to throw their tallest, their longest big man at him to guard him. I think he's going to have to adjust to that. And I'm glad that he has a couple of days here to think about that and how he can capitalize, because we know he can capitalize. I think he's one of the best, if not the best players in college basketball for a reason. We know his ability to score, and we know the effortlessness that it looks from him when he does do that. I think we need to see a little bit of that more just in the first half. Like, got to get the rock to him, because that gets everybody else going. Because you got to think Janai is one of the best big men assisters in the country. There's a reason he leads the team in it. Also, I think missing Denver Jones certainly hurt Auburn last night. Being that your number one defensive player going up against a guy like Wade Taylor, who got his jersey in the rafters last night at senior night. Like, it's that kind of player that you rely on Denver Jones to lock down. And certainly there's guys who can play defensively at a high level, Miles being one of them, Tahad, who's learning. I thought he stepped up in a big way last night, trying to fill the shoes of Denver Jones, which is probably one of the hardest shoes to fill in college basketball. But Miles Kelly struggled with fouls a little bit, struggled from the field. I think he was 1 for 8 shooting the ball. Kind of a tough role to fill. And I thought having that rock all season, like, there was a time where we didn't have Janai, and that Auburn adjusted. This one is a little bit of a different organization. Like, you gotta figure it out in a little bit different of ways. I like the fact that Bruce played Ja'Kai Howard yesterday. I thought that was good. I thought Ja'Kai Howard seemed like he was giving 110 and was awfully caring in his attempt to. I know there was a point where the frustration kind of bottled and he got the technical from bouncing the ball. I think that happens in a game where you're surprised like this. I like that he brought in Ja'Kai Howard. Granted, could the lineup have been a little different in other ways? Sure. But those shoes for Denver Jones and that missing piece, awfully hard to replace.
I want to start off talking about Ja'Kai Howard quick. He had 4 points. Auburn had 9 offensive rebounds. Both Ja'Kai Howard's points were off offensive rebounds. So I think that is kind of noted to point out that when Auburn, in a game where Auburn was struggling off the boards, Ja'Kai Howard came in, got offensive rebounds, and made buckets. But to go back to Denver Jones, I got my phone for a text that you sent me. No Denver Jones, no W. And I think this game proved that. I saw a stat where Dylan Cardwell is the only player on Auburn's roster this season that has started every game. So this is where Denver Jones hasn't started this game. And this game proved the impact that Denver Jones has on this team, especially defensively. And Bruce Pearl talked about that. He said, we obviously miss Denver Jones as our most physical defender. If you can defensively keep them squared up a little bit more and not have the front line have to come over, rotate, and help, then you've got a fighting chance. I mean, truthfully, just watching this game, Auburn missed Denver Jones desperately, and it just proved how much of an impact he has on this game. Offensively, we would have loved danger with Denver shooting threes, but just defensively being able to lock down Wade Taylor, who in his last 4 games was 6 of 30 from 3 and made 3 of 7 last night. That's a guy that you want Denver Jones on, so not having him on the court is a big aspect, but also just Auburn, we talked about how Auburn was gassed out from Saturday, winning the SEC regular season title against Kentucky, celebrating, having to come prep for this, traveling back Saturday, Sunday off day, having to prep for this game on Monday, traveling to Texas, having to play at Texas on Tuesday. They were just gassed. But to me, that also showed with Todd Pettiford getting his first career start. I think he's playing one of the most minutes he's had all season. But then we see Chad Baker-Mazara playing the point guard, which he's played that before. But for Chad, who was out of the starting lineup for being banged up a couple of games, I just thought personally, I would have loved to see JP Pegues or someone else, because one, Denver Jones is out. Tahad Pettiford needed rest, and having Chad Baker-Mazara, who's already banged up, ask more of him in a game where you need Chad Baker-Mazara not so much as creating plays, you need him on the wing getting ready to shoot the three, ready to get an assist to someone else, as he led the team in assists last night. I would have loved to see JP Pegues. I know that there's obviously something that Bruce Pearl and Ira Bowman and them don't see. I'm not the head coach of Auburn men's basketball, but to me, just having Chad Baker-Mazara start as point when you have JP Pegues sitting on the bench, who was our starting point guard at the beginning of the season, which I think a lot of people forget, that these coaches trusted him enough to start the season as Auburn's starting point guard. So I just would have loved to see that a little bit, especially when you already won the regular season title and you're playing Ja'Kai Howard more. Why not see if JP Pegues can step up? you don't know how long Denver Jones is going to be out for. He was in warmups, he was dressed, but he didn't play last night. We don't know if he's going to play on Saturday. So to have that sole point guard be on Tahad Pettiford and have Chad Baker-Mazara step up I would like to see Chad Baker-Mazara in other places. I thought that kind of was a missed opportunity, and I don't know if you felt the same way.
Yeah, I thought it certainly could have been a game where he got in and saw the floor. I don't think it was necessarily a test game, like Bruce said in his press conference before the game. Like, this isn't a test game. Like, we still have a chance to get a #1 seed. Like, we certainly still have things to play for. So I don't want to say like putting JP in the game would be a test. I wouldn't even say that. I just think he needed more from the bench. Like 10 bench points for Auburn is probably a season low, if not close. I know there's games where the starters have dominated, but the starters played the majority of the minutes yesterday. I mean, Tahad, career high 35 minutes. Janai Broom 32, Chad 34, Miles 31, Dylan played 22. All of those guys, negative plus minus. -12 Tahad, -11 Janai, -17 Chad, -9 Miles, -13 Dylan Cardwell. There's a wear factor. And I think that's a spot where you have to rely on guys that you haven't seen a ton of this year that you know probably could produce some too, like Ja'Kai Howard, like with Chaney Johnson sort of in some foul trouble. I say give him more than 24 minutes too. Like let run that offense you installed for Chaney. There were some points where he looked like he could have gotten going. Simo got in it and had good effort. Turtle, I thought was that was a guy you should have given more of a shot too over his last couple games. So you can always look to the benches when nothing's going right with the starters. But I thought yesterday you could just tell their legs weren't under them, and giving a shot to one of those other guys, one could have maybe helped you close that lead and try to get a shot at maybe coming back, building enough momentum to do that. But it also, depending on how long Denver Jones is out, he could come back against Alabama and break his toe and be out all year. That's a game where you can throw somebody in, see how they react, and change and update your roster as it goes and see how rotations flow with that. So test, no. Experiment, yes. I think they could have done a little bit more of that. But certainly, a good thought as to why not JP. I don't know why that answer is. Like you said, I'm not the head coach. Just something curious. And obviously we question more things when the score looks like it is after the game. And in the fashion that it did. Because Auburn's had a winning mindset all year, I've thought. And felt like they were going to go in every game and fight. Like Bruce's pregame speech against Kentucky. And they certainly did things, I thought, that were winning moves. Like there was updates to the game. We talked about updating the roster and having that be a refresh. There was points where I thought they actually did a pretty good job of changing their game plan. Bruce talked about doing that at points during the season too. First 10 minutes, A&M made everything. We talked about that. Auburn switched from its usual man-to-man defense to a 2-3 zone. And the plays after that, before Buzz Williams called a timeout, it was a forced turnover. Tahad Pettiford missed a 3. Ja'Kai Howard gets an offensive rebound and a putback. Next play, they try to throw a lob. Dylan Cardwell intercepts it because they're sitting there in a 2-3 zone waiting for that to happen. Auburn was just down 3 at that point. After being down the lead that they were early in that game, to only be down 3, it was that change in defense, which that is, I think, a breath of fresh air because, one, they haven't played much zone all year. I don't know that they even have. Maybe a 1-2-2, not a 2-3, I don't think. So to see that and to see that this team can change and they can do stuff when they can't rely on the man-to-man without Denver Jones, that's a big piece. They played that 2-3 because I'm sure they weren't comfortable guarding Wade Taylor one-on-one with a Tahad Pettiford, with a Ja'Kai Howard, with a Chris Moore. Not that I don't trust those guys to make plays, but I don't know that the coaching staff wants them on a guy whose literal jersey is hanging in the rafters. That was one thing I noticed that I actually really liked, was that they were able to switch that up and that Auburn delivered when they did. When they were in that zone, it actually worked.
Yeah, there were definitely good aspects to this game. Obviously, Todd Pettiford getting his first start, making his Auburn high 6 threes, making 5 of those in the second half. But I just do think that I saw a tweet that Buzz Williams might be Bruce Pearl's kryptonite. There is something about Buzz Williams coaching against Bruce Pearl. Heading into this game, Buzz Williams was 5-2 against Bruce Pearl and Auburn. Now he's 6-2. But there were just crucial points during the game where we're watching the broadcast. You just kept seeing Buzz Williams look over at Burgo and Bruce call the play and whisper something to his coach. And kind of Bruce talked about that after the game, how there's something that Buzz Williams has changed Texas A&M in this program, but there's something that Buzz Williams is able to go at an Auburn team and find their scout. And that is something that Buzz Williams does really well. So I think that's also kind of an aspect, especially I don't know if it was last season or the season before where Auburn had, the longest home win streak in the country. I remember Texas coming into Neville Arena and just blowing Auburn out, just completely throwing that win streak out. There's just something about Buzz Williams coaching against Bruce Pearl that just hasn't been figured out yet. Buzz Williams has something on that. And I just also, just coming in, we've talked about Auburn being gas and stuff, but that's definitely something to note is that Buzz Williams is 6-2 against Auburn, which is Buzz Williams against a team for Texas A&M. That's Buzz Williams' greatest, differential between wins and losses.
Yeah, I think that goes right along with we got punched in the mouth, what Bruce Pearl said after. And he talked about Buzz historically having scouted and been ready for his teams. Just how their systems work, they line up pretty well. The way Buzz's defense works and the way Bruce Pearl runs his offense, kind of that East-West style offense runs into trouble with these A&M teams. So if they see him down the line, I think they'll know how to better prepare. And that is a big thing. Buzz, obviously, the kryptonite comment is pretty funny. Can't even lie to you. But from Bruce's perspective, it's how do you change it up? How do you make it a little different? What's another element to your team that you can add, or offense that you can add through the guys that can score the basketball, the guys that that can read a defense and try to beat that? What can you do that with an A&M? And I know he's had to do that in playing these SEC teams a second time with Ole Miss. The game plan wasn't the same both times. With Alabama coming up, I'm sure the game plan will not be the same. And I know the implications in this game weren't as high as, say, they were against Kentucky, winning the SEC regular season. But Bruce Pearl said after the game, it's human nature. This game did not have the implications for a conference championship. If it did, would we have put our bodies on the line a little bit more? I hope so. So hearing that from Bruce, he knows what his team is capable of, which at this time of the year, if you don't, you're not going to win much. So the fact that he knows what his team is capable of, the toughness factor, the energy, the putting your body on the line, he knows it can be taken from good to great. And with Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to prepare for a top Alabama team that they beat in a very close one in Tuscaloosa, that's going to be big, I think, in how they up that scale, how they up that smoke a little bit. I know it's a rivalry game. I know they already won the SEC. You gotta just forget that. The SEC regular season, and honestly the SEC tournament, don't mean much. Just play to win. If you can win the basketball game, that's the most telling thing. So go in there and try to win the basketball game. As simple as that sounds, I don't think you can or should let the outside stuff, let the conference championship, let the conference tournament championship be where your sights are set. And I don't think they are. I don't think Bruce will allow that. But I think there was a little bit of hangover from that in this game. That was a little bit telling just from the very jump.
I agree. I think Bruce Pearl has spoken throughout the season how the reason how this team has done so well is they've only been focused on the next opponent and scouting that opponent. So I think coming on Saturday, having beaten Alabama in Coleman Coliseum, it is senior night. So Janai Broome, Chris Moore, Miles Kelly, Chad Baker, we don't know how many of these guys are coming back. Basically, Auburn's entire roster. We talked about how old there are. It could be almost this entire roster's last game in Neville Arena. That definitely adds to it. Alabama having lost to Auburn at home and then having basically given Auburn the regular season title with Jemai Mashak making that shot and then seeing Auburn, Janai Broome and Dylan sing Rocky Top. So just all of those things. It's a rivalry game. It's senior night. They're coming off a loss, and then tonight they play Florida. So curious to see how that game goes against top 5 SEC teams, Alabama and Florida. So that's definitely going to be one I'm watching to kind of see heading into Saturday. But Auburn has 3 losses on the season: Duke, Florida, and now an A&M. But the next game, they've always bounced back. They haven't really played two as back-to-back teams like Alabama could be a potential 1 seed. So this is definitely going to be a fight, especially, Auburn hasn't swept Alabama since our freshman year with Jabari and Walker. So that would be awesome. But there's so many added factors into this game that just forget everything from the outside, just play to win. And, rivalry game, senior night, I know these guys want to win. And then like I said, coming off a loss, Auburn really hasn't played two per se bad games back to back. So I don't think Bruce Pearl is going to change anything from that coming off a loss.
Yeah, and two things quick on A&M just before we jump into the Iron Bowl of basketball. One, I hate saying that the hangover piece from the SEC championship seemed to make a difference because obviously we don't, like, who knows that realistically. But you could just tell their legs weren't under them. And maybe the ecstaticness, the excitement of that victory kind of wore them out just a little bit. There was something different that we hadn't seen all year, with the thing that being different is that they were SEC regular season champions. That's the reason why I think I give that. Second, this game was miserable to watch because there were so many fouls. Like, it put it at a miserable pace. There was 12 fouls in the second half. It felt like there was probably 12 fouls that took the entire 30-second shot clock, and then Auburn fouled, which made me kind of like, from a basketball standpoint, I wanted to just kind of like rip my hair out. Just made the game kind of miserable to watch, and I can imagine playing in it. It was like, oh my gosh, there's no way to get any rhythm. There's no way. I think A&M just flat out came to play, made shots. They did everything they needed to do. They crashed 100% energy. Auburn didn't have that, and I think the pace of the play was just frustrating. Overall, a frustrating game for Auburn, no doubt. 83-72 loss to A&M. Next, Iron Bowl of basketball. Can't wait. This is going to be an awesome one. The first time it was 1 versus 2, finished in a 94-85 Auburn win in Coleman Coliseum. Janai Broome, 19 points, 14 rebounds, had 5 teammates scoring double figures. It was cinema. It was a barn burner. It was great. There was runs. Alabama came back. Auburn didn't like that. They had that little Chad Baker to Hod run at the end. That's the energy I want to see. That's the difference in this game. And Bruce said it in his postgame yesterday. He said, I want to see how we respond. If I'm Alabama, I'm watching that tape and saying, all you've got to do is throw them out of the way. Well, in the first game, Alabama couldn't really do that. So what's changed will be what's interesting between these two games. And Alabama, don't overestimate the fact that they could be a little worn down too. Their last couple of games have been, I think their stretch of last 7 games has been one of the most miserable stretch of games since they played Auburn. They lost to Auburn, lost to Missouri, who's ranked, beat Kentucky, who's ranked, beat Mississippi State, who's ranked, lost to Tennessee, who's ranked. They play Florida tonight, who's ranked. Saturday, they play Auburn, who's ranked. That is a brutal stretch of games. Watch how the legs under those Alabama players are. Watch how they prep for Auburn differently than they did the first time, because obviously that didn't work out too well for them. Janai Broome happened to go off. So look for the changes in these two games and how Bruce Pearl and company prepare to play the best team, in my opinion, that they've had to play 2 times, a second time. That's what I'm interested to see most.
I'm definitely interested to see how Janai Broome bounces back after 2, lackluster games at home. His last game in Neville Arena, I would be at 1,000% shocked if he has another lackluster game. I think this is the game for him to bounce back. Last game in Neville Arena, senior night, rivalry opponent, Alabama. But I think the biggest aspect of this game is whether or not Auburn gets Denver Jones. This first matchup, Auburn won the game because Denver Jones was able to lock down Mark Sears. And Mark Sears went on that little run, and then Denver Jones came back and locked him down. If we don't have Denver Jones, someone is going to need to step up and lock down Mark Sears. And if that doesn't happen, then Auburn will lose this game. Because if Mark Sears gets going, you need either... We've seen Dylan Cardwell guard point guards. We need Todd Pettiford to step up on defense. We're going to need Miles and Chad. If we don't have Denver, someone is going to need to shut down Mark Sears. But then also that leaves Aiden Holloway open. His first time back in Neville since doing, what no man said they would ever do. So yeah, it's going to be a game. And the biggest aspect for me is if we have Denver Jones, which I have a feeling, I'm not sure, it probably will be a game time decision again, questionable. We'll find out and figure that out. But biggest aspect of this game is the matchup between Denver Jones and Mark Sears. And not only just to watch it, but will it even happen?
Yeah, I agree. I think the stars will be the difference, and the guys who guard them could be even more of the difference. So those bone bruises, I don't know if you've ever had one. They are the most annoying little tweaky injury ever. You just want them to be gone, but it's a bruise. And you've ever had a bruise on your arm, bruise on your leg, you don't know when they're going to go away. They kind of just sit there and do their thing. Bone bruises, it's the most annoying thing. I had one on my foot, 8th grade. Oh my gosh, worst thing ever. But Denver, hopefully he's been kind of taking the time, doing what he needs to get back. I know previous injuries on this team, I think they've done a great job of that. Janai Broom with the shoulder came back. Janai Broom with the ankle came back over a couple of after a couple of games. So hopefully Denver Jones is off the injury report. Mark Sears obviously has been the guy for Alabama, 19 points a game, shooting over 40%. He's the leader. That's a matchup. You talked about Denver versus Mark Sears. I'm looking at the stars. Mark Sears, Janai Broom. Bama's lost a couple over their last stretch. They're in a spot where they're figuring themselves out. Auburn, they've won games. They've been number one for 8 weeks now. That might change next week, but you still got to figure out how you're going to get your guy back on his A game, because 2 straight games from Janai have been tough. I think he's due. I think he's ready. I think he's energized to have a good game. I think he misses that probably. Probably sick of hearing that Cooper Flagg dominated against Wake Forest, who is the equivalent of LSU in the SEC. I think he's probably so sick of that. I'm ready to see a big game from number 4, and I can't wait to see those stars go head to head and watch these 2 teams clash. It's going to be fun.
Janai Broom's last game in Neville Arena, he will bounce back. Like I said, 1,000% will be shocked if that's not the case. But I'm curious to see, because I know at first it came out that Denver Jones had a bone bruise, but Bruce Pearl later came out and said it was a soft tissue injury. So he definitely said he'll be out for some time. It's not going to hold him out for long, but I'm no doctor, so I don't know kind of the difference between a bone bruise and a soft tissue injury, but that's definitely something to look at is if there is a difference, how long that could have him out for. But he wasn't shoot around, he was dressed, but obviously last night he didn't play, and it wasn't like Auburn was dominated where like, oh, we'll just sit him, let's not have him play. Auburn never had to lead the entire game for the first time all season. So that's definitely something to consider.
Yeah, something to consider, and if you guys want to watch, good luck paying $370 for a standing room ticket. That's what they're at right now. This is going to be a great rivalry game. Saturday, March 8th, 1:30 p.m. It's going to be awesome. Dickie V is going to be in the building, so you already know it's going to be awesome, baby. Let's go.
I'm so excited. It's my last game covering in Neville Arena, so it's technically my senior night too. So gonna cry
Right.
probably.
Now we got 15 seniors getting after it, including you. Look at that.
Yeah, it's I'm gonna be emotional, but also, let's hope there's some celebrations after.
Right. Definitely that. And before we go, let's do some toasts. I will start with mine. Mine's going to be not a singular person, not a singular team. It's going to be a group of people. My toast this week goes to seniors all over the country. Senior nights everywhere from California to New Jersey. It's going to be awesome. A lot of seniors that have put a lot of years in at college basketball, given all their effort. We as seniors, we see it. We've been here for 4 years too. So certainly good for all these guys to get the recognition that they need and the culmination in their home arenas. And hopefully a fun month of March in the conference tournaments and the NCAA tournaments to come. But for all of our seniors, congratulations. You've made it. Senior night. Make the most of it. Live it up in your final game. JoJo CAVANAGH, talk to me about your toast for the day.
So I know this happened on Saturday, but we filmed after the Kentucky games. This was before Alabama and Tennessee. So Jemai Mashak deserves the toast. Doing it against Alabama, Auburn winning, clinching it, solely them. You know what means more when you're not just sharing the regular season title, when it is just you in the hardest conference in the history of possibly basketball, definitely in SEC history. So I think he deserves the toast. I know it was on Saturday, but I am toasting to Jemai Mashak because that was baller.
Yeah, shout out to Tennessee. I'm not gonna sing Rocky Top. That's not in my best interest for this episode. But Auburn falls to Texas A&M 83-72. Auburn looking forward to its matchup with number 7 Alabama tonight. 27-3 Auburn, 23-6 Alabama. Saturday afternoon, Dickie V's in the building. It's going to be awesome. JoJo CAVANAGH's in the building. Nonstop action Saturday. We're pumped. We're ready for it. We're moving on. How about that?
I'm excited. And Vince WOLFRAM will be in my state of New York, which is kind of crazy. You got to hear that for the first time. But I'm excited. Auburn, Alabama, what more could you ask for? It's rivalry day on Saturday. Duke, North Carolina, Auburn, Alabama. So should be a very good one. And we have that Dylan Cardwell episode finally coming out to you guys tomorrow, I believe. So it should be a good one. Speaking of seniors, that's, 3-time senior.
Not senior night, senior note. We're going to stay on the senior note with a fun, long talk with Dylan Cardwell, the Jumbotron man. So make sure to keep an eye out for that one and keep an eye out for our Alabama recap as well this Saturday, heading into SEC play. It's going to be fun. A lot of hoops coming. Best month of the year is here. Not because it's my birthday month, but a lot of basketball on deck. JoJo, you got anything else before we call it an episode?
I don't think so. I'm looking forward to Saturday. That's all I can say.
Me too. It's going to be awesome. For this episode of Straight Out of the Jungle, my name is Vince WOLFRAM.
I'm JoJo CAVANAGH.
Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for everything we got coming this month. For this one, War Eagle.
War Eagle.